Yeah, I've seen how this organization or these organizations that fly other airlines as well, how they have sometimes lost touch with the
Mm,
customers, right? And that's something that that we're going to talk about today as well,
Hmm.
on how to maintain that connection with who you're really working for at the end of the game.
Yeah.
definitely.
To hop in on the airline thing quick before we do life sciences, did you ever read the checklist manifesto? This airline talk has me remembering this book where it's all about the quality process of transformation and how systemizing it into a simple checklist, whether it's for heart surgery, brain surgery, or getting a plane ready, or even just cleaning your office, is like a
Right.
hyper effective way of doing it. But making a simple list is difficult, right? So those simple systems and processes are actually harder to design for airplanes or for companies. It sounds like you haven't read the book, maybe, but it's an
No,
interesting thread that pulls apart multiple industries, right? So, yeah, just a thought that jumped into my brain right there.
no, and I think you're absolutely correct, right? That what I tell my clients is, for the price you're paying, the list is the most powerful tool you have.
Welcome to the i-Pharm GxPodcast, your go-to source for insights and discussions on all things GxP in the life sciences industry.
Join us as we dive into the realms of cutting edge advancements, explore groundbreaking ideas, and meet the thought leaders and visionaries who are shaping this space.
Each month, we'll bring you engaging conversations, expert interviews, and thought-provoking stories. We're happy to have you here. Today, we're excited to be joined by Joseph Chi, a renowned quality and compliance advisor and expert with over 20 years of experience in global environments, from small biotech firms to large pharmaceutical and medical device businesses. Joseph excels in leading projects for compliance remediation and process implementation, with special expertise in quality and compliance management, quality systems audits, and ISO standards as a certified auditor. He's not just a leader, but also a mentor, skilled in team training and project leadership, an expert in international regulations like EUMDR and pharmaceutical and medical device regulations. Joseph's insights are invaluable to anyone within the industry.
You go to the grocery store, you take a list for the stay-at-home moms, and they have things to do all day. They have a list.
Mm-hmm.
If you, as a man, go out and you got to get things done during the week, you make a list. And again, for the price you pay for it, it's the most powerful tool that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't take advantage of that, right? And they
Yeah.
don't prioritize, and then they don't see what has been. How many of these items on my list can be grouped together so I can do them together,
Yep.
right? Versus, oh, I got to go back now and do that I could have done earlier when I was doing that other thing.
It's
Yep.
redundant. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, having a bit of direction, even if it's the most minimal organization, is such a massive step up from nothing in place. That's definitely been something that I've been trying to work on. I feel as though when I'm tuned into something, I can be very focused and successful at what I'm trying to do. But I'm always acutely aware there's a lot of other stuff that I need to be doing at any one time, and it's harder for me to prioritize just in my head. I'm sure there are people who can just do it all without having to create
Mm-hmm.
any lists or
Bless
have
them.
any
Yeah.
form of. I've tried so many different to-do list applications and all of the different things, and I feel as though there is something special about having an analog list, like in a notepad that you can sit there and write and scratch off, as opposed to checking a box in an app.
Uh,
I'm glad you said that, Max, because
mhm.
when I'm sitting at the airport and I'm waiting, whether I'm at the lounge or I'm at the gate and I'm waiting for the next flight, I do have, and I don't have it with me, I can't show you, but I do have a leather bound notebook that I take out
Yep.
and then I review.
Yeah.
Um, and the power that is transferred back to the brain when you're writing things down and then itemizing and moving and making arrows and moving things around on a piece of paper
Yeah.
is just absolute. It's an absolute
Mm-hmm.
power you have, and it's
Mm.
it's maybe it's a false sense of power, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, you feel so empowered that you've gotten something done.
Yeah.
Uh, where now you can go out and conquer whatever you're trying to accomplish, and compared to or opposed to doing it electronically, where subconsciously the machine is doing half the work for you,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? And I love technology, but to your point, Max, the analog way of doing it transfers a lot of that authority and power back to you
Yep.
subconsciously.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what the fact is or what the stat is, but there's significant value in writing things down over just reading or typing something, right? There's something about that mind, hand, pen connection that can embed information into your head a bit more successfully and maybe for a longer term than the alternatives, which is interesting.
Yeah, which
Absolutely.
sparks something in my brain. We're talking now synapses, wiring, and physical stuff,
Yeah.
studying tools and learning. And if we're an organization of three, right, we can do that, and we can have that empowerment through the analog methods. Large pharmaceutical companies, for example, might have scaled up to a point where handwritten lists and notes and that stuff doesn't necessarily get it done. So how do you design systems that aren't digitally taking away empowerment, but rather do the
Yeah.
opposite and give that to the
So
users? Yeah. So how would you approach that on the flip side of things,
so
right?
let's go back. So let's go back to the airline issue, right? I
Yep.
was sitting in my seat, and then all of a sudden, the pilot comes on the PA system and says, "Folks, I'm really sorry. We're being a little bit delayed. There's equipment problem. It's nothing major. We just have to go through the numbers." And obviously in my head, I don't know the rest of the people in the fuselage, but in my head, I'm going through. Of course, this is a very important step.
Yep.
The government and the law requires that you document everything. The FAA requires you document everything because people's lives are at stake. But at the same time, my other side of the brain said, hold on a minute, guys. This plane just arrived an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours earlier. How can you have equipment problems now?
Yeah.
You have them then, and no one's gone through it, and no one's resolved it.
Yep.
And how is it that now you're making the paying customer wait when you should have had this resolved a long time ago? Now, going to your point, right, and that is pilots come on board and they get paid the minute they sit in the seat,
Hmm.
just like the staff or the crew on the plane. Um, they don't get paid until the door's closed. They're standing there and they're greeting you as you come in the plane, but they're not making a dime until the door's closed,
Hmm. I didn't
right?
know.
Yeah, and so the pilot lands the plane. He's automatically outside the aircraft. The captain, the XO, not the CO, not the XO, but the commanding officer, leaves the aircraft and either goes to his next plane he's got to go on, or he goes around, takes a quick look around the aircraft, and then leaves because he's got to get off the clock,
Yeah.
right? And then once he's off the clock, usually the guy you still see in the plane in the cockpit is probably the executive officer, the co-pilot, and he's there doing filling out the paperwork and whatnot,
The fun
and
admin,
making
yeah.
sure exactly the last minute attunements of the administrative work that needs to get done because the CEO just took off,
Yep.
right? And he's left. And if they both leave, well, guess what? They got to do it in their hotel rooms.
Yep.
And yet there's a plane. It's empty. There's no leadership on the plane, right? And everyone now gets off like cattle. So how do you find out if there's a problem with the aircraft? Well, when the new captain comes on board, he powers up the computer, and the computer, which works on redundancies, is going to tell him, hey, there's a problem here, there's a problem here, there's a problem here, there's a problem here. And he's got to get into maintenance, and maintenance has to be called out. And meanwhile, there's 300 people in the back waiting for you to push off
Yeah.
to get on the plane. So moving towards the pharmaceutical and medical device industries, I think they've done much better because they've spread loaded and they can. Here's why they've done better, because they can. They physically can do better because they spread loaded all of those responsibilities amongst all these other people that they have on board.
Yep.
You have several managers, you have several supervisors, you have several administrative individuals that have been tasked with the responsibility of, if you see, if you hear, if you know, you got to let us know, and you have to do this, you have to do that, and that's part of your job description, right? And it's sometimes it's very clearly spelled out when you come on board as an employee. This is what you're going to do, and you're going to let us know. You're going to inform the management. You'll inform your supervisor of this and that, and so it's easier when a blender, when a piece of equipment, a Blue M oven or something goes down, in a manufacturing setting, it's easier to get that done because the maintenance people know already how many pieces of equipment are on the floor.
Yeah.
Supervisors know how many pieces of equipment are on the floor, and the manager knows how many pieces of equipment on the floor and how many people are working on it, and the workflow going through those pieces of equipment.
Yes.
Right, because they have to keep not only touch of what's going on with the people, but they also have to keep metrics, right?
Yeah.
And so you spread load all these responsibilities amongst all these other individuals, and it's a little bit easier. Now, when we walk in and Max calls me and says, I need you to go to Arizona to this one site out in Scottsdale.
Yeah, not for the beach.
Right? And you go to this equipment and you start looking at the equipment. You know, one of the things that Max and I always talked about was, Max, I come in at 3 o'clock in the morning at the site and I walk through the clean rooms. Remember we would talk about that, Max?
Absolutely.
I would come in at 3 o'clock in the morning and walk through these clean rooms, and the behavior is supposed to be identical to that as to the team that's there at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Because the procedures are the same.
Same training, same SOPs, right?
Same training, same SOPs, and the expectation is the same. And so as you come in at 11 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning, you know, the third graveyard shift or the 13th graveyard shift, and you're coming in and you're walking through these sites, you see that sometimes there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And then you report back to management saying, hey, here's the way I do it, guys. Hey, when was the last time that you guys came in to audit your evening shifts? Oh, they get audited all the time. Really? By whom? Well, we have an audit department that does that. Great. Is it the same audit department that does the 9 to 5? No. Our audit department that does the night evening shift works at night. And I'm like, now I see what the issue is.
There you go. Absolutely. And it ties quite nicely into quality culture, doesn't it? Because you can, you can have one group of people doing one thing, but if there's any disparity in the focus, in the direction, in the hands-on work that's performed, in the procedures actioned from the other group that's going to be there, whether it be night shift, day shift, or whether it be different shifts, just overall, that can create a massive issue, right? And really embedding that culture. So you have very harmonized mentalities, systems, processes, and actions across everyone involved in the manufacturing process, and the quality system and everything else is so integral. But it's far easier said than done, I'd say.
Yep, I agree. And there's a message that needs to go out, and that message needs to be constant. It has to be the same message, whether it's for the daytime shift or the evening shift. And we'll talk about that as we go forward in today's discussion.
Given your level of expertise and given the areas that we've been discussing so far, it'd be great to just understand a bit of a overarching background as to yourself and your exposure to the industry so far.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, guys, and good morning to your customers that are going to be looking at this. I've been in the industry for 27 years. And I came into the industry from the bottom up. I was a technician as I entered the industry. I came into the industry right after I left the service. I was in the Marine Corps for 10 years as a non-commissioned officer. And then when I left the military, I decided to come into the private business. And the first industry that I saw was import-export. And I liked it, but it didn't take me in the direction I wanted to go in. So I came into this industry as a tech. I hit the ground running. The first thing I learned how to do was to validate equipment. I was kind of like thrown into the lion's den, and I was given a bunch of regulatory requirements by a very small firm. And I was taught to read the regs, and I was taught to read the requirements. And then I was also taught to read the manuals of the equipment. And by doing that, there was a great deal of I'd say loss of time, because I really didn't know what I was doing. Right? I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought it was the best. Looking back now in hindsight, it was the best approach, because what it did is it highlighted areas that I needed to hone in on to find the expertise in that area. Right? No one sat me down and said, "Let me give you a class." And as I do that now with my clients, and I say, I'm going to give you a classroom on XYZ, I know that a certain percentage of the classroom is going to tune out. They're going to tune out
Yep.
because they want to be somewhere else, because, they're supposed to be on lunch, because whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that, and going back to my situation, when I saw myself in this predicament where I had all these manuals, all these documents, I had no idea what I was reading. I didn't want to fail. I wanted to really do a good job. So I put more emphasis and more attention onto what I was doing, right? To be able to learn what I was supposed to learn. And that worked for me very, very well. When I got out of the military, I went to college. I have a bachelor's degree in international relations and political science. After that, I kept working, and then I went to the University of Miami. I live here in Miami, and I attended the University of Miami and acquired a master's degree in business. And because I wanted to learn the language of management. If I was going to be in this business and I was going to be an influencer and I wanted to be a person that was going to be able to help others make decisions, I had to be able to talk the language of those individuals that were making decisions. And a lot of that is in mathematics, it's in statistics and accounting. Hands down.
Data doesn't lie.
These guys make decisions, and they want to know how much it's going to cost, how long does it take, and how many of them out there are suffering from the same ailment, right? To the statistics part. And so once I got that under my belt, it was very easy for me to open the door and talk to not only the managers, but the directors, the VPs, and to some extent, even the ones who are running these businesses, where you meet them in the middle of the hall and they say, hey, you're the new consultant on site. Hey, nice to meet you. Tell me, what's your assessment? Well, I just got here. I'll let you know in a couple of days, right? But now that's an open door. Yep. That's an open door to come back and circle back and say, you stopped me in the hall the other day and you said this and that, and well, I wanted to give you an update that. And so now that, what that did for me is it got me in touch with everyone in the business. Now I know who's saying what to whom and who's not saying what to whom. Mm-hmm. Right. And that works very well as well, because it allows me to see the battlefield, if you will, from a very high level. And now I understand, all of the moving parts. I went to law school out in California. It's very important for me to say I'm not a licensed attorney. I've worked in a lot of big companies and I've worked in a lot of small companies. I worked at Baxter, J&J. I was at J&J in Mexico and here in the United States and in Europe. I've helped them move assets. I've helped them close down sites. I've helped them transfer technology from one site to another. I've worked at Ethicon in Mexico, Puerto Rico. I worked at Philips. I've worked at Siemens in Germany. I've worked at Zimmer. I worked for tissue companies locally. A company called Regeneration Technologies up in Orlando. That was a spinoff from the University of Florida. I worked at Abbott Labs, and I've worked for a myriad of other small firms. Okay, in the pharmaceutical sites, I've worked for Janssen, Wyeth, Abbott Laboratories, Andrix, which is a generics manufacturer, Sandoz, another generics manufacturer, which everyone knows of. Yep. They partner with Pharmacia and other organizations, and Novartis, actually, Pharmacia and Upjohn, Pfizer, MedImmune, and IVAX Pharmaceuticals, another generics manufacturer. Generics even though generics and innovator companies look identically alike, they function very differently when you walk inside the buildings. The entrails of these organizations are totally different. Yeah. And the way they think, the generics, the way they think is very different from the innovator drug companies. Mm-hmm. Innovator drug companies are very set in their ways. They can be predictable, and this is what you expect from them. Generics are constantly rushing against the clock. Mm-hmm. Because the competition is extremely fierce amongst those organizations in the generic space. Yeah. So that's my background in the 27 years that I've been in this industry.
Fantastic.
I picked up on a few things there, Joseph, and like Max was going to say, thank you for going over it all. But as we're here to talk about the quality systems and culture, I'm seeing some clear threads that are going to go through the whole discussion. You're an NCO, you're an MBA, you're a lawyer on TV. You play one on TV, not one in real life. I'm just messing around with you. I know you're not. But you have all these three things. You have the discipline and the detail-oriented nature of the Marine Corps. You have the business sense and communication of the MBA. And you have the compliance and legal mindset of someone who has gone to school but not passed the bar and is not a lawyer in any of the contiguous states. How do those threads shape your perspective on quality systems? Because that seems apparent to me.
I didn't finish law school. Okay, I did go. I have some type of training, but I didn't graduate from law school. And I think that's very important to say for a lot of reasons.
Yes. So I'm just tracing the threads of your military background, your business and accounting acumen, and then I was being flippant about the law degree. I just mean your mentality for compliance and understanding of the framework of legal regulation.
So we all meet a profile, right? We grow up at our homes, and then when we go out into the real world, we all meet a profile. And by the time you're an adult, you already have a personality. And my personality is, I like to separate the right from the wrong, and I like to stay on the right side and always be compliant. And so it's very easy for me to be able to identify when rules are in place, number one, when the rules make sense, number two, and when the rules need to be changed because they don't make sense. And number four, the most important part is from the NCO part of the Marine Corps is, the leadership ability, how to get people, how to influence people and how to get them to do what you want them to do when they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes, and I remember when I was in the industry, you had great captains of industry in our industry in pharma and medical device. And we had people who were running these industries that had been in the military. And you can tell how that their leadership ability was very, very clear and distinct and very distinct because this is the rule. This is how I'm going to do it. Here's my decree. There's no way around it. Right. And everyone else had to just, as they were walking out of the boardroom, they said, all right, so how do we do this? Now you got to get together with your teams, especially if you were a manager. Let's say you're a director and below. Now you got to get with your teams and say, how do we bring about, this decree that this captain of industry wants us to do? And so, having been in the military, having definitely gone to law school, and definitely having traveled a great deal, has taught me how to identify. First of all, how to identify individuals in the industry, right? When I come on board and, you guys say, I want you to go here, I want you to take care of this. I want to meet who I'm going to be dealing with, and I'm going to interview them. Yeah. So, and that interview process takes a while. It's not just in one day. We get to know each other as we're working together. Right. And this is those little nuances that a lot of people don't really understand. They come on board as a new employee and they're very happy, but they really have no idea who they're working for. And they have really no idea who they're working with because they're not cognizant of the fact, who am I working with and who am I working for? What's the objective? What's the company's objective? And what is this department's objective? Yeah. So to your answer, and I hope I'm answering it correctly, is that all of these things that I've been through in the past have set a lens for me to look through. And when I see out in the industry things that don't match up to what I'm accustomed to or don't match up to what I'm expecting, that's something that box gets a check, which means a little bit down the road, I'm going to come back and I'm going to check on this again. And I'm going to bring this up to management and say, hey, this is what I saw. Is that normal here? And if they say, yes, it is, well, that may be a problem. It all depends from what perspective you're looking at it from, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
No, I like the point you made earlier. You're talking about compliance. Obviously, there is an understanding of what needs to be done and what should be done, and checking in that it is being done. but also really taking a step back. And I think this is one of the intrinsic values of bringing in external consultant support like yourself is having another set of eyes to come in and look at if what you're doing makes sense, if the rules that are in place make sense, if the SOPs and procedures are the most efficient and optimal things, or whether there is room for improvement and quality culture, and obviously remediation that we're going to talk about is it's so intrinsically linked with assessing what's going on, understanding if there is a better or different way of doing something, and really driving down to those processes, and assessing where those additional efficiencies can be, and then educating everyone involved, not just the leadership and the directors, but really making sure that that new process, procedure, mentality is really embedded throughout the whole organization, and it ties really nicely into the quality cultural transformation piece. But I think it's key to highlight that just because there is a rule in place, it doesn't mean that it is the optimal way of doing something. It may be someone who worked there 30 years ago who's left the business, and they wrote this procedure and they put it in the system, and that was the way that they did it back then.
Yep.
But we live in a world now where there's a lot more access to data and statistics and intelligence and technology that we can utilize to improve these processes pretty significantly.
Yeah, and isn't that the way that business works anyway? An organization comes into the market, has a rule, an internal rule on how to manufacture something through its process. It manufactures a widget through its process, and then it puts it out on the market, right? And all of a sudden, in order for that organization to compete, it's got to look at its processes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How do we refine? How do we improve? How do we become more efficient and more effective to be able to get this product on the market quicker? That's the prime directive.
Yep.
If we all remember Star Trek, what's the prime directive, right? The prime directive for an organization is to do what's in the best interest of its shareholders and its bondholders, right? And you wanna get out there, and you want to be able to compete. And so the only way you can do that is by looking at your internal processes and your internal assets. And if I have assets that are 30, 40, 50 years old, and I have to constantly be maintaining them, and it's costing me an arm and a leg, versus my competitor that has brand new assets, even though they've spent, a lot of money on it, and they have that money on the books, they can still, amortize that out to 5 years or even more, probably, depending on their accounting department. And that relieves them from that headache, because now they have all these new equipment that's much more efficient and makes them much more effective. And so, to your point, Max, management and leadership has to identify where are the gaps, where are our gaps that we need to identify and close to be, number one, a more efficient company, a more effective company, and put out a much better product. And of course, at the end of the day, look better, because the optics of it all it matters a great deal too.
Yes.
Right? I mean, how many of us have heard of a company that we all know of, and all of a sudden on the news, so-and-so company was fined for XYZ reason.
Yep.
And they've been fined $300 million. Any company, doesn't even have to be in our industry, right? Any company. All of a sudden now, that makes you think, hold on a minute. And there's a slew of patterns that go through your mind, and decisions and thoughts that go to your mind that says, hold on a minute, I took that product, or hey, I used that product, or hey, I go there in XYZ. And so the optics are very important. And that's why the CEO and the COO of companies are constantly looking at how do we improve the optics of our organization.
Yep. And going back to first principles, Joe, you mentioned some awesome stuff about your perspective. You touched briefly on your, what I'll call the smell test for efficiency, optimization. Does it feel right, is how it described to me. Is this process, it's the rule, but is the rule correct? Does it feel and smell right, so to speak? Can you get a little more detailed on, you go in, you interview people, but maybe if you have your checklist in your head of things you need to do at like a granular level, could you walk us through that as we're getting into the weeds here a little? Because I'd love to hear what your physical smell test checklist is. That'd be very cool.
Sure. So if our topic for today is quality systems and quality culture. and I come on board an organization, and I may not even know that the quality culture is an issue. I may not even know that. In fact, management may not even know that.
Yep.
They may have an inkling, and on many occasions, and here's my blanket statement to management when I come on board and I'm trying to sell something to someone. And Max and I have talked about this profusely on many occasions, and that's, I'll come to an organization and the hiring manager or the executive will say, we have an issue down in that area on the floor in that corner. And I'll say, okay, great, let's go look at it. And I'll go down to the floor, right? With that predisposed notion in my head of what I just heard. And I'll go down to that corner and I'll talk to the guy or the young lady who's working on the equipment. And I say, hey, I heard through the grapevine that there's an issue here. And they'll say, it's not here. It's over there. And they'll walk me to that other area, be it receiving, be it maintenance, be you name it. You know, and they'll say, here it is. And we'll look at it and we'll say, damn, wow.
Yeah.
They're absolutely right. It's actually over here. Sometimes there is that disconnect.
Yeah.
Where as things are siphoning and filtering themselves up, they change color. Right? We know why. Right? We know why. And it changes color as it goes up. And then management has this preconceived notion of something that's happening when in reality it's not that detailed.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I tell management, you have to have a very clear line of communication and a clear policy of communication with everyone. And I'm not saying that the CEO or the director of quality has to come down to the floor and greet everyone every day. No, some places do that.
Yeah.
They're small enough where that can happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, and there's other places where they're larger, where, you know, you have some executive managers that do get involved, you know, publicly with their employees. But I'm not saying that's a must. What I'm saying is that there has to be a communication policy, and that's another topic in our discussion today, and that is that there has to be a clear communication policy, a positive communication policy, something that's going to give you a positive result, where you can measure issues that are coming and siphoning themselves up, and that people want to tell you what the issues are.
Yeah.
They want to tell you what the issues are. They don't want to, you know, not say it because they're afraid of retribution or they're afraid of, you know, hey, you know, if I say this, man, this is not going to be good for the organization. And then they may not understand that then in the long run, the price that they pay as an organization is much, much higher.
Yes.
Yeah. No, there's a lot in there, right? And often when we're interfacing with a client of ours or a potential new client, and similarly as a consultant, when you're given a scope and say, hey, this is the issue on this site, you're going to go on that site and help them fix the issue. It's always going to be a black box until you're on site physically speaking with the people involved. And there are a couple of aspects there that I think are great. Is one, an ability to really develop the relationships to be able to get all of the true information out of people, because especially from a quality and compliance standpoint, a lot of the people across all seniority levels within an organization may not want to tell you everything about their organization from day one as a consultant coming in. Who's this guy? Who's this Joseph Chi who's turned up on site and asking me all these questions, right? And I think that there's a lot to be said about an ability to really develop and foster relationships of trust and credibility, whereby they feel comfortable to share that information with you so you can really get to the root cause. And I think tied in with that comment, the executives and the senior people at these organizations, whether they're at site level or above, often will be told and it'll bubble up what the issues are, but they're not the ones on site. They're not the ones in the weeds and really understand where the disconnect is and what is going wrong. Can you speak to your experience when you go on site to a client?
Sure.
Yeah, how you really go about diagnosing what those issues are, given the context that you're provided prior to going on site through a scope or through conversations that you've had, because there's often a difference, right?
Right. So these executives that you meet when you come on board, if you have the honor of meeting them, right? Because sometimes these executives are ghosts that lie behind walls that sometimes you never meet.
Yeah.
But if you do have the opportunity to meet with them, these executives have an unfathomable amount of work, and the responsibilities are just totally unfathomable. They're just, you just can't wrap your head around it, because they are tasked with a great deal of responsibilities to be able to bring these organizations to task. And when you're a mid manager, you have a pretty good idea that the VP of quality is really busy. But to really understand, how busy they are, you have to sit in their shoes and stand in their shoes and sit in their chairs.
Yep.
And some of these VPs or even directors, they have responsibilities over multiple sites, which even makes it much more difficult, because it's now you're talking about moving parts, right? No two sites are alike. You factor in the human factor,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
When you factor in the human element, now you know that none of these two sites or none of these 3 or even 13 sites are going to be alike. And so the first thing I walk into when I meet with someone is, hi, how are you? Let me ask you a question. What do you do here? Right? Oh, I'm the director of quality. Great. If I already knew that, because that's the person I'm gonna speak with and interview, then I come with the mindset of I have to talk to this individual at a very high level, because they're not on the floor dealing with the product.
Yeah.
Let's start there. The second is, this individual, he or she has a great deal of concerns they got to deal with every single day. So I'm ready to be interrupted 3, 4, 5 times in the discussion, right? I'm ready for it, because I'll be in a conference room and the door will be opening. Oh, this is happening. The door will be opening. Oh, this is happening. Unless they're very, very disciplined and they have a set process in place where they blocked out that 1 hour, hour and a half, or 15 minutes, and then nobody has access to them, which sometimes is the case. But sometimes I've seen it where the other option is the case too, where I'll be with them in a conference room and people come in and out, and and they'll say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm sorry." So that's one thing we have to have in mind. The second one is, when I speak with them about their problems and their issues, the first thing I ask is, "So who's the staff I'm going to be working with?" And they'll give me well, you're going to talk to this person. I'm going to get you in touch with someone. Okay, great, perfect. And when you're talking to individuals at this level, I don't expect a lot of details, because again, they work in the macro space, right? Because they're supposed to be reporting into another customer of theirs, which wants bits and pieces,
Yeah.
right? And so I have that running in the background as well. Hence, let's go back to the beginning of our conversation. I went back to school, got an MBA. I was sitting around in my cohort. There were people that were managers and directors wanting to go to that next level in their career and in their lives. And so we talked a lot, right? In the classroom setting, even after class. And so I got a double education, right? When you go to these MBA programs, you get a double education. You just don't get the theory out of the book, but you get to interchange with people around you that are living the life.
Yeah.
They're telling you on a day-to-day basis what's going on.
Yeah.
So, these things don't change from company to company. There are behaviors that are constant, regardless what industry you're in, regardless what company you're in. So then I get on site and I start talking to the person that I'm assigned to, right? I'm going to assign you to this individual. Okay, you'll be working with the manager of quality or the director of quality, and then I'll ask, hey, do you have an org chart? Just as if I were an auditor, right? You have an org chart for the site? Yes, we do. Okay, great. You want the site org chart? Or you want just the quality org chart? Oh, I like to have the whole site org chart. That'll be great. I mean, to start with, let me have the quality org chart if it's that much easier. Yeah. But eventually, I want to know who I'm going to be dealing with, because in a remediation and transformation project, you're going to be touching a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? And down the road, let's say you're going to be there for 6 months to a year in these long term projects to bring about a positive change. You're going to want to know who I need to talk to that not only is in charge of that area, but I want to know who I'm going to talk to that can also be an influencer
Yeah.
in their own organization.
Yeah.
Right. And that takes time. That takes time, and it's a trial and error kind of thing. Right? I'll be meeting one person, and I may have met the wrong individual, even though they're in charge of that department.
Yep.
That could happen as well. But eventually, it trickles down to, when you start walking the inner sanctums of these organizations, you start meeting the people just by natural flow of things.
Yes.
You start meeting the people that are the right individuals that you got to talk to.
Yeah.
They start coming to you, right? For the most part, within normal distribution, they start coming to you. Hey, I heard that you're the new consultant working on. Yeah, that's true. Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Joe. Oh, great. Listen, we're going to be working with you later down the road in another day, or I've been assigned to you for next week. Oh, great. Here, let me give you my card so you can send me a text with your number, and let me know when's the best time for you to get in touch with me. Yeah. Right. And those formalities and nuances opens a lot of doors, because a lot of people, for the most part, when you come on board, they are a little bit apprehensive, but when you tell them that you're here to help them out, they open up, and they do honestly and forthcomingly, they want you to help them. And that's what I've seen so far.
Yeah. Joe, that was awesome.
I don't know if I've answered your question.
I think you nailed it. And all the consultants out there, there's your playbook for when you get on site, how to add value and find the right people. Be proactive, know your audience and speak their language, empathize with their problems and know it's not all about you getting everything. Set realistic or have realistic expectations about the timelines for yourself and others. Get that org chart and figure out, not based on job title, but on personality and how things really go, who else can influence and who they influence to minimize your work for delegation. That's how you effectively add value. So when you put yourself in that spot, discuss with us how you now take that information you've embedded yourself. How do you converge the people, systems, data in the context of quality, remediation, and culture? Because you've gathered, you've embedded. Where do you go from there?
Sure. So as a quality professional, and I'm sure that all quality professionals that are going to be viewing this are going to know what this is and agree. We know how the documentation hierarchy should look like. So you come on board, you get that org chart, then you ask for the list of documents, right? Hey, can I have access to the list of documents? If I haven't been given access already, where sometimes I'll come on board and they have the laptop in hand as I'm walking through the door, right? or they say, hey man, I'm so glad you're here. We've already given you access. Here's your email. Here's your password, right? In those cases, I say, great. Where am I going to be sitting? Oh, you'll be sitting downstairs in the boiler room. Great, no problem. It's cold outside. I'm gonna love the heat down there. and then they'll give me access to the system, and the first thing I'll ask for is, may I please have access to your list of documents? I want to see what they have. So I want to look at their documents, and in the back of my head, I have already a preconceived notion of what a quality system should look like.
Yeah.
Right. And then I start going through it, and I'm going to the first document I go through is going to be control of documents. How do they have their documents set up? Right. I want to see how they have their documents set up, and I'm going to be looking at the document. I'm going to be looking at how they deal with making these documents. I'm going to look at the dating of the document. Is it up to date or is it expired? What revision is it in? Those kinds of things, right? And you get a great deal of knowledge, and you know exactly what's going on when you start looking at a document. You say, my goodness, this document's expired. Now you know what's going on, right? You have a good idea that, man, these guys are so busy. They got so many things going on that they have a hard time keeping up with their documentation system. Yeah. Or it could be that, the other case would be they have the wrong person in the right place. Yeah. Right. They and again, that's part of our discussion going down the road. But they have a person that's doing a task that maybe is not their strong suit.
Yeah. And right? we talk in the first episode about, utilizing more advanced quality systems, right? Moving away from the paper-based system. We talked earlier in this chat about the benefit individually of having analog lists and really kind of embedding that, but it's just not scalable, right? And especially when you're dealing with the plethora of documents that you've got to hold and continually track to be able to get a product to the market in this industry is not scalable for you to have everything handwritten. Certainly not in terms of revisions and SOPs and stuff. So when you're going into an organization, how much does the existing framework of the quality system that they have in place impact your ability to really kind of understand what is going on? I can imagine nowadays you go on site who's got a brand new, really high-end quality management system software. Everything is interlinked. You've got one dashboard and you can get access to all of the documents. Is really nicely organized. That's probably a process where you can more quickly ascertain the situation and the health of their system, as opposed to going in with a system where half of it's paper-based, half of it's electronic, they're mid-transformation. Yeah, how does that change your ability and your speed of ability to maybe make an impact and assess what situation is going on at that site?
Right. So I'll come on board, and the minute that I see what kind of quality system they have, the formatting, right? Um, Once I see it, then I will immediately in my head I'll make a calculation of how the level of difficulty of trying to get things done, of trying to influence and trying to get, because you can ask for a document and they'll say, "Oh, I have to go all the way and go get it," right? Versus, "Hold on a minute, let me get it for you," and bam, bam, it's been printed. And when it comes out, it already has the confidential stamp on it automatically from the system. It tells you, do not remove from premises. So from the technology perspective, companies that are very high speed, again, we talked about this earlier, have a much better chance of catching things than an organization that is still paper based. An organization that's paper based, are going to have to really be scrutinizing their quality system daily, because anything can fall through the cracks and you may not see it.
Yeah.
These automated and validated documentation systems will tell you when you have to update a document.
Yeah.
They'll tell you when a document revision needs to be reviewed, right? For your annual process reviews, for your annual quality system reviews.
Yeah.
The system itself will tell you. Whereas if you had a manual based paper system, you're gonna have on your calendar on the wall when you're gonna do your annual product review and annual quality system reviews.
Yeah.
And that and I mean I'm being facetious about it, but don't but some companies have that.
Yeah.
So they'll have it written down somewhere, and if you forget, God forbid you forget, and you get an FDA on. I'm at a client now currently that is under threat by being visited by the FDA. We know that.
Yeah.
We know, we've already been told that the FDA may show up. They haven't called to say, "Hey, we're going to be there at such and such a date," but it's pending. It's looming, and the storm clouds are forming and whatnot. And so when you get in that state, now you start looking at all these things that you need to look at, right? And when you have an automatic system, it's a much easier process than if you had a paper-based system.
Yeah.
Because you have to go through these. And then just imagine this. I'm going through this paper, put it away, 10, 15 minutes later, come back and look at it again. Right? And I tell the staff, no, we already checked that. Oh, I'm sorry. Because again, it's not an automated system that's telling you, "Hey, all this is done. Don't worry about it. You're good. Green light. Box gets the check.
Yeah.
Move on to the next one."
Yeah.
And so having an automated system is a tool which I think is imperative to any of these organizations that manufacture devices or pharmaceutical drugs, biologics, parenterals, because it makes life much more easier, and the compliance is much easier to confirm.
Yeah.
I think it can kind of help embed a bit more of a quality culture mentality in everyone involved, right? If there's checks and balances in place where if you're an operator all the way through to being the top level person in an organization, if there's things that like those required fields when you're signing up for a website and you have to enter that information, otherwise it won't let you progress. Having that
Right.
embedded in your day-to-day life from a quality perspective, you have
Right.
to enter this information, you have to review this document, you have to check in with this and this. I think that's a really powerful consistent reminder for everyone in the chain to be able
Right.
to do the right thing at that time and that moment, because everyone's human, right? And the moment you get humans in a process, people are going to forget things. People are going to say, "Oh, I'll do it later," or "I'll make that mark later," or "I'll review that document later," and it falls through the cracks. And the significance of those cracks in our industry, when you're getting products to patients, whether it's a medical device or a pharmaceutical, if there's a poor quality output or poor efficacy or something wrong with that product, you're putting lives at risk. So the cracks are big crevasses in the industry, and kind of not letting stuff fall through is so significant. And I think, yeah, you made a good point. That automated systems are really worth looking at and investing in. Even though it might be a big initial output in terms of time, resources, and money, you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches down the line.
Absolutely. Not only does it do that, Max, it's very telling of management, right? When you have these organizations that have these cracks in the system, it's a reflection of management. It's a reflection of whether management has their finger on the pulse of the issue. And as an outsider coming in to your organization, I'm going to be able to identify very quickly where the gaps are and where the disconnects are. Not just from the compliance perspective, because that's very easy. The FDA has already said what the minimum requirements are, and everyone in our industry that is going to be viewing this are experts in that.
Yep.
We're already experts in that. It's the little nuances of knowing. So when I go an aside here, when I go to a client site, I'm always asking for a whiteboard because I like to write things on a board, and I draw a line, and just imagine, guys, a line going down the whiteboard, and I said on one side is non-compliance, on the other side is compliance. The farther you are from that line on the right hand side in compliance, the safer you are as you slip out of compliance. If you're right over the line because you're just meeting the minimum requirements,
Yeah.
and you fall out of compliance, and a very seasoned, very astute auditor comes in to an experienced, astute auditor comes in to audit your quality system, they're going to find the cracks.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very easy because you're right over the line.
Yeah.
So if you're farther away from that line, you've done your due diligence and you've put in a lot of effort and a lot of long hours in keeping your quality system as compliant as possible. And everyone here knows, including your viewers, they know that compliance is a financial black hole.
Yeah.
The managers, the operations managers, and the bean counters and the finance guys that are in these huge companies, they look at quality, they say, man, what a waste of money. Because they don't add to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Accounting wise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Accounting wise, I can't sell anything that's going to add more dollars to the bottom line. Operations does that. Operations, who owns the assets of production, who owns the raw material, owns the labor, owns the building, owns the land. They buy the electricity, they buy the water, right? They buy the raw materials like I don't know, like oxygen and nitrogen to clean air, all that stuff. To be able to do that, to a certain point, when you validate the process, you're adding a little bit of value to it. But again, it's a compliance requirement. And me standing over and saying, no, you got to redo this again. Oh, that product has to go back, put it in quarantine because we didn't. The inspection was not performed correctly. Now you have to put it in quarantine and investigate. That does not add any value to the bottom line at the balance sheet or the income statement.
No.
It doesn't.
Yeah, and
It really doesn't. Actually, it detracts, because now that individual, those quality technicians and that quality person, and now you have to bring out a quality supervisor to supervise a rework.
Yeah.
And that's going to cost, that costs more. So now you're detracting and taking away from the income statement.
In the short term, though, Joe, and this is the objection, right, where you think proactivity is the whole point of compliance and quality. But I want to highlight one thing before we unpack that is the automated system and the fundamental truth that small, frequent reminders will train people and keep them on the bowling alley with the guards up more easily, rather than getting yelled at every 6 months to do your job the right way and follow the rules. Little reminders, click that box, enter that field, takes a huge burden off of management who may not be at that level, who may not function with extreme ownership in all of their actions, and it doesn't trickle down. So I wanted to highlight that as a fundamental truth where those small reminders are great. Talk to us about proactivity, because what you said is... Go ahead.
But before I do that, I want to reiterate that if you do this right the first time, there's no rework. So you're not spending more money from the organization's cash flow to be able to do this again. So again, going back to accounting, when I look at the process, I'm saying, man, this is costly. This is costing this organization more money because they have to do this all over again. So when you do the process, again, going back to compliance and continuous improvement, when you do it correctly, you're not taking money away from the organization to be able to rework anything.
Well, so this is the question, right, Joseph? And we've had in-depth and multiple conversations around this. Often when clients come to us just intrinsically as a consulting firm that offers kind of expertise within this area, they're coming to us with issues that were avoidable if you did it right the first time, right? And irrespective of where you are in the industry, irrespective of your seniority and your experience level, I think there's a pretty fundamental understanding that, hey, if you do something wrong, it's probably going to come back and bite you at some point. These aren't things that really you can sweep under the rug, especially when you get into complex therapeutics and really complex medical devices that are going to be inserted into people and provide life-saving care, right? And I know you've got some personal examples with family members, Joseph, where quality systems and poor quality culture have led to issues with products that you use, right? That your family uses. But it doesn't make sense oftentimes why these companies don't just invest on the front end. And it's always a point of contention in my head.
Right.
I try to understand why these companies would try and take shortcuts on the front end. That people say there's two certainties in life, right? Taxes and death. I'm pretty sure you can add a third, saying that the FDA is going to come and audit you at some point if you're in the industry, right? So why do you think some companies do feel as though that they can get away with it, knowing the compliance financial black hole that will come if they don't do things right the first time?
Exponentially.
Because a lot of people, because most people, most individuals in our industry don't understand the FDA. They don't understand the function of the FDA. They don't understand the enforcement power the FDA has. They don't understand. And when I say enforcement power, we're talking about, permanent and temporary injunctions that they can place on an organization, right? And I say permanent and temporary injunction, and, people in the legal field are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But the other 99.9% of the individuals have no idea what that is, right? And when an organization has a temporary injunction placed on it, that product cannot go anywhere. It's got to be placed in quarantine, supervised by the FDA.
Yeah. Not fun.
Not fun.
Can you make money when it's quarantined? The answer is no. So this is another case for proactivity, that exponential payment you're going to make, time, resources, physical money, and denying patients the treatments you've been.
And you have the FDA, right? and you have the then you have the FDA looming over you, looking at this product that's in quarantine.
Yep.
I mean, they're looking at it while it's still in quarantine.
Yep.
And then, God forbid, you have a permanent injunction or you have an order to destroy. you have to destroy this product and have the FDA, witness that the destruction, to a certain extent, witness it, right? You have to have a certificate of destruction and submit it to the FDA that you have destroyed this product. Some companies, there have been companies that say, yeah, we've destroyed it, but they go off and they sell it overseas.
Yeah.
And they clearly violate, federal.
Yeah, you got to burn an effigy, right? Build a Burning Man statue with all your medical devices and just get rid of it in front of them on video or something.
So I have, I don't know if you guys have access to it, but I have access to ORA's statistics of citations. In between 2009 and 2024, drug citations were at 6.8%. Right. Food citations were at 6.6%. Devices were at 13.8%.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's the FDA is very active in going out and dealing with these organizations that don't meet the minimum requirement or cannot meet the minimum requirement. And I'm not saying that we have to be afraid and cower in the corner when the FDA walks in, but there's a rationale behind the Food Drug Administration, right? The agency's here to ensure the public health and to ensure that products are not going to maim or are not going to be deleterious to public use. And, the agency has enforcement power. Yeah. And that enforcement power has to be respected.
Absolutely. And it's there as a safety net to protect people who are going to be taking these drugs and using these devices, right? So again, another reason to implement a good quality system on the front end, really focus on embedding a quality culture of success and excellence. And I guess a question for you, given that you go in both as a consultant and assess quality cultures, but also have been responsible for quality departments yourself, and given your military background and having grown up in a military household myself, I've definitely seen benefit to that mentality. Some people like it, some people don't. There's nuances associated with leadership in general, but how do you look at embedding quality culture? What are the kind of key pillars that you look to really embed in an organization to produce a very productive and successful quality culture?
So if an organization is publicly touting a quality mentality, and you walk in and you see that they're walking their talk and that they actually do live the spirit of what they tell the client or their customers, you have a feeling of relief, because you know that this company, number one, is being well led, and the person at the helm is relying on their staff and is relying on their officer corps, if you will. If I go back to a military jargon, right? I'm relying on my officer corps and on my non-commissioned officers and my NCOs to go out there and do what they're supposed to do, and the business is running smoothly. That's not to say that every now and then I may have an issue. The FDA may come in and I get a 43 because they walked into the warehouse and I had something that was not cordoned off, or it wasn't labeled, or the label was incorrect, right? And it may have been a minor thing, but I look at it and I say, you know what, I could have done better. And then, my task is to ask, so what happened? What happened? Did I oversee it? Was the individual overworked? Is it something that could have been avoided? Something as signage and making sure that areas are cordoned off should not be an issue for me, because that should be second nature.
Yeah.
Right? A quarantine area is a quarantine area. I'm not going to put my bicycle there when I come into work. Okay, that is a quarantine area.
Yeah.
It's not for my lunch. It's not for my bicycle, and it's an official area for things that are either in quarantine for non-conformances, or because it just came in from receiving and hasn't been tested yet, or whatever the reason is. But it's in quarantine, and it's supposed to be there because it needs to be investigated or needs to be reviewed, right? And so if my quarantine area, which by the way I can move, if my local policies and my local procedures allow me to, I can move that quarantine area anywhere I want, given the space I have, just as long as everything that's supposed to be there is always in the quarantine area, regardless of where I put it. And that takes a little bit more juggling, right? It takes a little bit more brain work, because if I have a quarantine area that's mobile, then I need to be on top of it constantly, right? And if I have multiple quarantine areas that are sparsed out throughout the site or throughout the general area or specific area, okay, again, I need to be on top of it. I need to be cognizant of the fact that I have several locations that are quarantine areas that have product in it that cannot be touched unless they go through a specific process. If the process is automated, I got to make sure that the validated system is telling me I can use it or not use it, and that there is a paper trail at the end telling me how I got the product in there and how I got it out, and who approved it, right? And all those things have to be looked at, and we have to be on top of it, literally be on top of it. So when I come in and I say, so what happened, guys? Why did you get this, citation? Why'd you get this observation? Well, it went over our head and we just didn't notice it. So then that's when I start asking for the continuous improvement process, for the transformation process. I say, so who's in charge of this? And I won't make a big deal out of it because I don't want to finger anyone out, right? I'll say, so let me ask you something, guys. Tell me, who's in charge of this? Well, I was, but I didn't do my job right. Why not? What's going on? Are you overworked? Was it something that you didn't notice? Because give me a good reason. Yeah. So as I again, from the influencer perspective, as I get this information, then it gives me the ability to go back to management and say, I think we need to have a change here, and that change will correct this issue of yours, right? Again, going to root cause, and then the gap first, and then going to root cause, and then figure out what the root cause was, and then get a permanent change in place.
Yeah, and I know we were focused on contamination spaces a lot as the example for that one. You mentioned something with your local procedures, allowing the flexibility to do that. My mind was drawn to your whiteboard example where you draw a line in the middle, compliant and non-compliant. It occurs to me that SOPs aren't so simple, and that having the flexibility to interpret and allow some gray area on either side of the black and white lines is necessary for things like that within the framework. How do you take it? Because everyone can read a piece of paper, can check boxes on a checklist. Where is the art to the science of compliance, and how do you apply it in that way? Yeah, you're smiling because this is an easy question, right? But go ahead and tell me your philosophy on it, because it's a toughie, right?
Yeah. So most organization guys really want to do well. Yeah. I don't know any organization that gets up in the morning and says, how do we screw this up? How do we get the FDA in here in the next 5 calendar days?
Shut us down. Yeah, let's go.
let's get management together, and let's find a way to get the regional office in here as quickly as possible. I don't know any organization that does that. Most organizations, for the most part, within normal distribution, really want to do well. They really do. Of all the organizations I've been to, everyone's had procedures. Yeah. That's evidence. That's evidence that they want to do well. Yeah. They got it. They have policies. That's evidence that they want to do well. They have records. That's evidence that they want to do well. Okay? Not just that they want to comply, but they understand that the records at the end of the day may serve them a positive on the business side. Yeah. Right? So they understand that in order to compete in the marketplace, they have to have these items in place as well. They get it. They really do. So again, for the most part, most businesses really want to do well. Sometimes because of the makeup of the business, the way that this organization is designed, sometimes it makes it a little bit more of a challenge. Some organizations like to run lean, right? And so depending on the flow of business and depending on the number of individuals working at the business, that will dictate, whether there are bottlenecks and whether there's, issues that occur in that flow,
Yeah.
including quality. And that includes quality, incoming inspection, in-process inspections, and, small pharmaceutical manufacturers have, testing, cell cultures and stuff like that they had to deal with.
Yeah.
And if they don't have the staff, it's not going to get done. And sometimes they may not get done proficiently. And those are telltale signs that, someone needs to come in and look at it and say, guys, you got to take a look at this again, because this process here, this step here is affecting your outcome over there, which also affects the input to the next step down the road.
Yeah.
By the time you get all the way to the end, now you metastasize the problem.
Yes.
Yes.
And now it's going to be very difficult to come back, or it may be more difficult to come back to identify where exactly the issue occurred at its genesis, right?
Yep.
Where did it first start? So you want to be able to have good procedures in place. Procedures need to be reviewed constantly. A good, robust quality manager, or a good, robust, quality process in place where there's good oversight, and part of that is also that quality manager can be approachable.
Yeah.
Going back to the leadership part, okay, leadership is very important here. This is the human element.
Yep.
The quality manager, the quality lead, has to be approachable. Hey, I got this problem. It happened about 5 minutes ago. I need help resolving it. Sure, no problem. Opposed to, I got this problem. It happened 5 weeks ago.
I'm only telling you because I've been slapped on the wrist and told that I have to tell you.
I'm telling you because I haven't been able to sleep for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's same conversation.
Yeah.
Same two individuals.
Yeah.
Different context. Very, very different reactions, right?
Yeah. And that's a culture thing, right?
You guys just gave me two different reactions
it's so
to the
obvious.
same problem. To the same problem, but just different context.
Yeah.
And so when the quality person says, and when I was in the industry, I would tell people, I want to give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to hear it the moment it happens.
Yeah.
I don't want you to wait 24 hours. If you do, fine. I mean, because sometimes you have to wait because you're not here.
Yeah.
So tell me tomorrow. But the sooner you tell me, the quicker we can resolve it, and the quicker we can avoid a huge, huge problem.
It feels like to me there should be some level of incentive for people within the organization to identify and vocalize quality-related concerns and issues, because I know...
But don't they already have that?
I think
They
so.
have suggestion boxes. They have suggestion boxes. They have if you hear something, say something.
Yeah.
If you see something, say something. You're right. All these organizations, especially the large ones,
Yeah.
they already have that. And for the most part, these larger organizations have an army of people throughout their organization, and sometimes some of this information, gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Because they may tell someone. They may tell the right person. They may tell the wrong person, right? For the most part, again, and I'm a true believer in this, guys. For the most part, people want to do the right thing, and they'll tell their supervisor, "Hey, look, this happened," and the supervisor at that moment will exercise immediate action. Stop the machine. Let's take this. Let's take that, because they're following the process that they learned. They can go back to the procedure, and most of these people don't even have to pull out the procedure to execute this immediate action. They just know it, because sometimes in these cases it happens so many times and it's part of the process that they've memorized the immediate action process for these processes that cannot be further improved. And further improvement may mean I got to buy a new piece of equipment. I have to move this out to a new building, or you know what, I have to move this to another division of mine that can do it because they have the assets and they have the know-how, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. Or I got to sell this process to another company because I'm not that. This is not my core competency,
Yeah.
right? So those are the different options. But for the most part, of what I've seen in my experience, most companies do want to do the right thing, and they go through the mind of, okay, let's stop the machine. For example, I was at a client site that was sealing a bag, and they had this heat sealer, and sometimes the heat sealer would seal well, and sometimes it wouldn't. And you know that there's a test method at the end. There's a test that process has a test method validation done on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't want any gaps, especially when that bag, after it's sealed, is going through ETO sterilization later on down the road, right? So there's an inspector at the end of the table. For every bag that comes out, they look at the bag to see that there's no canals, that the seal is contiguous, that it's well sealed, that there's no wrinkles in the seal, that there's no possibility of any air getting in or out.
Yep.
And so it's a visual test.
Yeah.
This is a visual test. And that's why there most probably is, I hope so, a test method validation performed on that function. And so as we go through that, we see that. Now, let's say that 6 times out of 10, there's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That, 60% of your bags are not sealed well, especially when you're doing 20,000 bags a day.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Right?
bags.
It's a lot of product that has to go back and be what? Reworked.
Yep.
Which means you're paying those people again to do the same job they did the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which means that the bean counter upstairs has no idea what's going on. But they will, because now the product's going to go out later. It's going to go out later. And so there's a delay. And so, I come in and I look at it and I say, okay, we have to look at this issue. Can I see the validation can I please see the validation to the sealer? When the sealer was installed, the IQOQ. Great, here it is. Great, I look at it, perfect. So can I see the maintenance records to the sealer? Sure, here it is. Okay, great. I'm looking at the maintenance records. No problem with the maintenance records. Can I please see the training records on the individuals that are performing this function on this sealer? And look at the training records, right? And there may be that everyone's trained on it, and maybe one or two have not been trained on it, but they were pulled from another area to do this. Or it could just be that, and I hate to say this, but that the area is not being well supervised.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys have ever done this. I've done it. A whole day straight.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the most comfortable, and it's not the most, fun process that you can be doing. So sometimes you lose track of what your function is while you're doing this process. And so sometimes this process requires a little bit more supervision to ensure that the outcome is much better than 40%.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've been on sites, on sterile injectable sites, where they've got visual inspections of the closed vials, right? So you've got someone whose job it is to sit there in front of a conveyor belt of these vials coming past. The vials come in front of a light. So they are looking pretty quickly to try and see if there's any particulate matter, if the vial itself, if the solution is cloudy, if there's any parts of the rubber stopper that has fallen into little black dots within the vial. But it's flying past pretty quickly, and I think there's got to be a lot of fatigue associated with sitting there, staring at these vials as they fly past, and identifying the one out of all of them, or the two, or however many that may have an issue, or even you think that there may be an issue, but it's going past so fast that you can't see it. So I think that's a good example, and what you've just discussed that really points to where technology, utilizing these kind of autonomous different systems using computer vision and these various inspection routes that are being developed and are developed in place at the moment, that you can really alleviate a lot of those potential issues, human-related fatigue and focus. It's a pretty integral job, like making sure that this product is going out the door safely, and any way that you can remove the human error from that is obviously going to be a significant benefit. Is that something that you've seen being implemented at organizations successfully that has had a material uptick in the quality of output?
Absolutely. I think that organizations that invest money in vision systems reduce errors. Um, I can't, most probably by 80 to 90% of the times.
Wow.
Because the vision systems that are developed today are extremely good. A lot of them are used to ensure that labels are placed correctly on vials and on bottles and on packages. And then some vision systems make sure that these vials and bottles and packages are in the right direction. Some vision systems make sure that these receptacles are filled or are empty,
Yeah.
right? So they do their jobs very, very well, and they definitely remove the human need to have someone there looking and making sure that one or the other is being performed. So from the investment perspective, I think that these organizations they get a huge return on their investment by using these vision systems. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And the technology has increased so much that that the return or the effects are almost perfect.
Yeah.
And we started this discussion with people writing notes by hand. We've talked about people playing a game of telephone within the company, right? Hey, here's a problem I told my boss, and then their boss, you know how it dissipates down the line, and they're like, yeah, there's a monkey in the warehouse. No, I said the machine was broken, but it's 50 people later, and it's 2 months later, right? So with that delusion happening, there's an interplay, and as we think of this whole discussion here between the people, the right people, the systems, and the right systems, how do you blend this crazy matrix of right, wrong, different factors, and all those things? And I know this is an impossible question, but as we bring it to a point, how do you kind of boil that all down? Because you need the people who create the problems, that use the systems, that design them, and it comes back, right? And I know it's a little meta, but I just want to hear how we come back to a broader sense and where we're going with all of this in the industry, right? Because it matters.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because now you're definitely injecting the human effect into this,
Yes.
right? The human factor into this. Not everyone is going to have the same amount of enthusiasm to do their day to day every day. Not everyone has it.
Yeah.
You know, so as an outsider, I come in, and one of the things I ask always is, "So tell me, how long you been here?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives me a snapshot of many things. That answer actually says a great deal. It tells me about their background. It tells me, how they got here. It tells me where they're going. It tells me whether they like it or not. It tells me, if there's issues, I can listen to the voice going up and down as they're talking to me.
Yeah.
Right. All right. And that says a great deal. It tells me, that answer tells me a great deal. I've been here for 18 years versus, dude, I've been here for 18 years.
Yeah.
Same answer,
Yeah.
just two different intonations of voice, right? So one tells me that they're excited. They may not love it, but they're enthused. The other one, I'm almost positively sure that there have been some issues in the background,
Yeah.
and that may, and again, in another couple of weeks, if I'm there for a while, I'll say, so I heard you've been here for 18 years. So what did you do before you got here? In this department, and that way now I'll know how they got into the organization.
Yeah.
And sometimes going to our earlier comment of having the wrong people in the right places or in the wrong places, sometimes that's how you find out. No, I was out there, and then they needed someone here really quick, and they just pulled me out. And they put me here, and then they trained me, gave me 3 days of training, but I've been here ever since. right? And so, depending on the size of the organization, depending on the type of management that they have, you can read a great deal through the tea leaves when you have these conversations with these individuals.
Yeah. Well, people are the lifeblood of organizations, right? And especially within our industry, technical people are harder and harder to come by, people who are experts within a specific field. And I think you made a good point there. A lot of clients that have a lot of issues, whether it be with quality culture or quality and compliance overall, there's often retention issues. There's often struggles finding and then keeping the right people in the roles, and that revolving door. And it happens in every industry, right? You're never going to hire someone, they're going to stay there forever. It's just not how people work. But having a good training infrastructure is key, but really making sure within the framing of quality, everyone within the organization understands that they have a direct and material impact on the product coming out of the door, whether they are an operator and it's their first job out of college, and they're earning somewhat minimum wage, and they you'd still want them to be as infused, as bought in, as embedded within the kind of why mentality. Why am I doing this? Why is it important that I do this right? As the director of quality who wakes up every day and has to think, how can we improve this organization? How can we make sure that the quality is embedded? It's tough to motivate everyone simultaneously towards the same goal, right? And I think you're inherently always going to have one area of the organization or one person within the organization that is going to show up and maybe they're in a bad mood. They didn't sleep well. They're going to miss something that day. Yep. People are complex. Everyone involved has a very direct impact on the product going out the door. It just exacerbates that fact.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent, and I look at things from the hierarchical scale, looking down, right, from the CEO or the chairman of the board, all the way down to the person who cleans the floors. I worked in Baxter. When I started at Baxter, the people who cleaned the floors had a pocket part of 21 CFR Part 20. Mm. They were required to have it.
Wow.
We're talking about the janitorial service.
Yeah.
They were required to have it because they clean not only the hallways in the building, but they clean the clean rooms too. Mm. Mm-hmm. So they were required to have it. And I remember many years ago when I was a tech, some of these people were stopped in the hallway, and I would see the manager saying, "So tell me what happens when you go inside the clean room. Demonstrate to me what you have to do." I mean, right there, they were tested.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. And that's, to me, I see that as good leadership, because the leader, whether you're the CEO or you're the CEO of your department, right, whether you're the department manager, you're the person who's leading the boat. Mm-hmm. Okay, the quality manager or the quality supervisor, both of those individuals are leading the boat for their department, and it's siloed. It is siloed. Max was talking about it earlier. It is a siloed process, but they're the ones who are the organization leaders, and they're beating the drums every day. They're the ones who have to beat the drums, so everyone else is in sync. They're in unison, with that leadership, and that brings me to the point that good leaders make good, sound decisions. Decisions come with consequences. All of them do. All decisions you make come with a consequence.
Yep.
And a good leader, when Max and I have talked about this in the past, when I come on board and I see an issue, I tell the person who brought me on board, your teammates or your staff needs mentoring. Mm-hmm. They need coaching. Great, can you do that? Yes, I can help you in that area. Mm. Right? And then they need to be taught that decisions come with consequences. And so you mentor these staff members or even managers or even directors who want to go to that next level, right? And you mentor them and you say, in order for you to get to that next level, in order for this process to be improved and be improved for a very, very long time, these are the steps we need to take. And now Now you've you started as an SME, and now you've transitioned over to being a mentor of leaders.
Yeah.
Every organization needs one, and they usually do. And you go to your HR department and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a mentor," and they'll tell you, go to your department head and ask your department head to either be that mentor or to choose someone in your department. But sometimes a sound voice is the one that comes from the outside.
Yeah.
Right? That sound voice comes from the outside, and they look at the whole picture holistically, and they say, "Yeah, I see what's going on here." And then that consultant, that individual, comes in with these different set of skills, which are, believe it or not, they're esoteric skills, right? They're esoteric skills, and they come in and they spend time with your soon to be leaders.
Yeah.
They mentor them into, number one, speaking the language. We started with that conversation in the beginning, speaking the language. They start seeing the business as a process. We talked about that in the beginning of the conversation as well, and then they get a renewed sense of appreciation for what they're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
So Max and I knew that a while back when we were working together, I was at a site that was manufacturing a product that my daughter wears. My daughter she's a type 1 diabetic. And I was at the site, and, I said, guys, you gotta stop. You gotta stop. Right. And when I told them that, I had an unfair advantage, right? I had an unfair advantage because I know the person who's actually wearing this, right? And then it turned out that the person I was answering to said, "Hey, can you bring your daughter in? Would you be willing to?" I said, "Absolutely." So I talked to my daughter first,
Of course.
who's an adult,
Yeah.
who's an adult, and I said, "Hey, my client wants you to come in and talk to these people." And she said, "Well, in the beginning she was like, nah. But eventually, okay." So what I did was, as an influencer, I said, "This is good for you. It'll be good for you. It'll be good for me. It'll be good for everybody, even for the client. It'll be good for everyone." Because they get, number one, it's good for the client because they get to see in living color who's wearing their device.
Yeah. Becomes very real.
It becomes extremely real. Yeah. It's good for you because you get to see the inside entrails of the place that actually manufactured this thing for you.
Yeah.
And it's good for me because I get to see the reaction from both one party and the other.
Yeah.
Right? And we did it. We walked through the site. She was given a tour. The client was extremely happy. They got to see in living color a patient. And they got to hear things in living color, not through a phone call, not through a fax, not through an email.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This happens all the time. Not the in living color thing, but complaints come in all shapes and fashions.
Mm-hmm.
When you're sitting in front of the individual and you say, "Well, this is what the device doesn't do," or "This is what the device does and it's not doing it well," that takes on a whole different perspective.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it? Because now here you are, the director of quality or the manager of quality or whoever, sitting in front of a person, a live individual who has your device on.
Yeah.
And they're saying, "It's not doing this."
Mm-hmm. Yep. And my life depends on it.
And my life, type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
And my life depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
That puts everything in a whole new perspective, especially when you look back and you're sitting in front of the glass that on the other side is the production area.
Yeah.
It puts everything in a totally different light. And so I'm very lucky, and as my kid was growing up, I would tell her I'm very lucky because I get to see things and I get to hear things and talk to people, all kinds of people, thousands of individuals I've spoken to in my career, literally thousands, about the good, the bad, and the ugly of our industry. And a lot of them were leaders. And to a point, at this stage of my career, I've had a great opportunity to sit down with many of those leaders and say, I think, my opinion, my professional opinion, is you should tack in this other direction. In my professional opinion, don't change a damn thing.
Yeah.
Don't change anything. You're doing great. Wait until next year after the board meeting or promotions, and then make your voice heard. But I think you're doing great. But I've had the opportunity to speak on both sides of the equation side.
And there's a lot of value in both of those, right? It doesn't always have to be bring a consultant in, they're going to tell you off, they're going to tell you all the stuff that you're doing wrong.
Yep.
It's often very validating and rewarding and positive to bring someone in with that separate set of eyes and say, hey, yeah, you guys are on the right direction. You guys
Yeah,
are
Max,
running things well.
absolutely, Max. What you and I do basically is we give our clients a perspective, and we give them the opportunity to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we also give them the opportunity to hear, the positives and how they distinguish themselves from other organizations.
Certainly.
Right? Yeah. And we allow them the courtesy to hear that, because I think that companies that are doing well should be told that they're doing well, especially from an outside third party that has no connections to shareholders, bondholders, stakeholders, none of that.
Absolutely.
Because that carries much, much, much more weight.
Definitely. A lot of
right.
weight. Yeah, not 100%. And I've definitely told that story of you and your daughter to clients before, and I think it definitely is so powerful, right? And I know that you had that conversation with multiple levels of seniority within the organization, from operator level people, quality management, all the way up to executives who aren't on the site, who
the executives wanted to be there, but they couldn't fly in on time.
Yeah.
I mean, they called and said, when are you going to be there? Tomorrow morning. I wanted to be there tonight so I can be there in person.
Yeah.
Because all the work that we did culminated to this one day. Yeah. Right? And they really believed that this was a great thing for everybody, because they used that as a marketing tool as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there were people that were very appreciative of the fact that there was, again, a living individual wearing the device, willing to come in and give their testimony.
Yeah.
Not just, oh yeah, this is great, this is wonderful, and just only the positives. No, it was a time of reckoning.
Yeah.
As well.
Yep. The truth is valuable because you have to face it. People's lives are on the line. There's no protecting your ego. And the people receive the treatments, they make the systems, and they do the work, and we can't get away. We keep coming back to it through the whole discussion here, and I love that. Correct. And I love that that's the focus from the start and the finish. You make it happen for those other people.
And it gives us, and you're absolutely right, and it gives us legitimacy, right? As a consultant, as a business owner, as a consultant, as a partner of you guys, it gives us legitimacy.
Yep.
Not only do we come in and tell you what's wrong or right and then we leave, no, we get involved in other areas. Yeah. We get involved in the more esoteric and the more discrete areas of the business, because we understand how those also work together as moving parts for the entire business. Again, going back to the original conversation, I went back to school because I wanted to speak the language of management. I wanted to be able to get my point across and understand exactly where the conversation was going and how I could influence management to bring about positive change.
This is a playbook for growth, and all the consultants out there, listen to what he's saying about how to be a person and not just a technical SME when you're doing assignments. Joe, you've been so clear about being a human in your projects, in your work. It jumps out at me to a high degree, and it's no wonder you're successful and build relationships. You're not just a guy doing documentation in his house somewhere random. You're there, boots on the ground, talking to the people, and that's the part of consulting that gets lost in the shuffle. That mentoring, that focus on humans, communication, and all the discipline you mentioned when it comes to telling the truth and facing it as fast as possible to get through it. So for me, those are big takeaways. Max, I don't know if you have summary points or further questions, but I'm enthused by the way you handle yourself, Joe. Honestly, it's very awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I'd reiterate that. Everything continually is pulled back to people, processes, and culture, right? Okay. And all of them are intrinsically linked, but often there can be disparities there and disconnects. And I think if you've got people in the organization and you've got good leadership and you've got good processes and overall the mentality of taking a step back and assessing what you're trying to achieve. What is the end goal of us doing this? What is the end goal of this business? To get this product to the market, to save people's lives, to treat people, to provide them something that is essential for them to be able to live a positive and healthy life. And I think if you can embed that throughout the organization, you're going to have a phenomenally productive organization. And I think bringing people in like yourself, Joseph, who has experience working with different organizations, different sizes, different setups from a departmental standpoint, it's an additional perspective that is so valuable, because irrespective of whether you're doing things right or you're doing things wrong or you're doing things in the middle, having someone come in and say, hey, yeah, this is working. This isn't working. Maybe this is something that you should try. And I think this can help you out. It is so powerful, but really coming onto site and developing relationships is the only way that you're going to be able to achieve that. You can have all the expertise in the world, go on site, start telling people what to do. You're not going to get the buy-in. You're not going to get all of the relevant information that you need to make those judgments and calls. So really being a human first, as you said, Phil, and really developing those relationships across all of the levels of the organization is the key to gathering all of the information you need to then be able to make a judgment and then be able to communicate that judgment and next steps to an organization so they can produce positive transformation and change. People are the lifeblood of the industry, both on the production and the business side, but also on the consumer side. And you've got to maintain that perspective.
Consumers have a great faith in these manufacturers.
Yes.
They go to the store and they blindly buy the product.
Yes, they do.
Or they go to their doctors and the doctors prescribe these products and these devices, and the public accepts it.
Yep.
And so, when I go to these companies and these clients, I that's one of the things I tell them. Someone's wearing this. You understand that, right? And they say yes. I said, no. Do you really understand that? Because I know that you're part of the process that makes it, because it's for someone to wear it. But do you know someone who's wearing this? Yeah. And most of the time they say no. And that's, when I tell them, I say, hey, for J&J, for example, I have a J&J device in me. I have a hernia mesh, right? And when I was at J&J, I told them I have one of your products in me.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And that places everything in perspective, right? It puts it in a different perspective, actually, because now you, again, living color. It's very important.
That's it. My mum has a Medtronic spinal neurotransmodulator, which is a medical device that she's had inserted for the past 5-6 years, and it's been absolutely life-changing for her. And it's been incredible in remediating chronic pain and serious issues that she's had with her back. She calls herself a bionic woman, and she talks about it very proudly. And there are these wonderful success stories where these devices and drugs can be life-changing in the most positive way. Yes. And then the patients and the consumers will absolutely sing and dance about them, because there's no more of a positive impact that you can have than facilitating someone to live their life, however that may be. And it really is a very powerful thing that these businesses can do to humans' lives. I think you're right, Joseph. All these companies want to, at the end of the day, do the right thing. Quality and manufacturing these devices and drugs is very complex. And there are these systems and balances and processes in place to try and optimize them. And just, I think, maintaining a continuous improvement mindset throughout your career and life is the key, really, because you could be doing something well, it could be doing it right. New products, new devices, new systems, new technology comes out. Just adapt with them. Say, hey, just because we're doing it right now doesn't mean we can still do the same thing for the next 20 years and that still be right. Yeah. Keep improving, keep doing better, adapt, be dynamic, be people focused, and you'll be very successful. Any other closing comments from you, Joseph?
No, I mean, we're all here to improve the process and improve quality and help these organizations get better, right? And I'm just hoping and help these organizations do realize that we're here for. We're here to help them.
Fantastic. I think that wraps it up. So thank you so much for your time, Joseph. It's been an absolute pleasure. Always value your insights and conversation. And yeah, Phil, unless there's anything additionally from you, we can wrap this up. This has been episode 3 of the i-Pharm GX podcast. And hope you gents have a fantastic rest of the weekend.
Thank you so much,
Likewise.
Joseph. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's great to see you again.
Okay. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the GX podcast. Please join the discussion on our LinkedIn page, and we invite you to reach out with any questions, topics, or recommendations from future guests.